I don't wish to be offensive, but I must say I don't like the idea of imposing an identity on anybody. I think if somebody presents themselves as something, that's what I accept. And today's Supreme Court ruling does more than define woman in law. It redraws the cultural fault lines of British politics. In affirming that sex in the Equality Act refers to biological sex, the court has handed down a judgment that cuts through years of equivocation, especially from institutions reluctant to confront the tension between gender identity and sex-based rights. For many, this is a triumph of biological realism over ideological abstraction. For others, particularly trans rights groups and organisations like Amnesty and Stonewall, it's a moment of disappointment and dread. Proof, they argue, that institutions in Britain have regressed, and it's a chilling precedent. And yet, amid the jubilation and hand-wringing, one sound has been conspicuously absent, and that's the voice of female Labour ministers. Where was Bridget Phillipson, the Minister for Women and Equalities? Where was Yvette Cooper or Jess Phillips, the Minister for Safeguarding Women and Girls? Silence. Strategic or evasive, and that silence is telling. It betrays Labour's precarious position caught between its progressive wing and its pursuit of electability. Starmer, we're told, has brought Labour back to the common-sense position, and indeed this ruling, one suspects, quietly pleases him. It grants Labour plausible deniability, clarity by court decree, without forcing a public rupture with its more active base. It's not that Labour is unwilling to speak, it's that the court has spoken for them. Yet this ruling is not just a domestic cultural event, it's part of a broader ideological repositioning. The UK is slowly but discernibly shifting its axis, tilting towards Europe and cooling towards America. And nowhere is this more visible than Starmer's tentative but unmistakable embrace of regulatory alignment with the EU, particularly on food and environmental standards. You see, I've done a sort of a switch here, not a twitch. This matters because America, especially under Trump and his Vice President J.D. Vance, the gerbil, is demanding something incompatible with EU partnership, a clear break. And Trump wants access for US agri-food exports, hormone-treated beef, chlorinated chicken, and he wants Britain to pick a side. To Brussels, this would be a betrayal of standards and sovereignty. To Washington, it's a test of loyalty. Starmer is gambling that he can keep one foot in both camps. We're not choosing, he says, but realpolitik rarely tolerates such equidistance. Europe demands alignment, America demands divergence. And the forces gathering in both capitals suggest patience is wearing thin. What is Britain going to do? So, what does all this have to do with the court's definition of a woman? Well, everything. This ruling affirms a very European-style legal clarity. Womanhood is a category grounded in law, not fluidity. It's a kind of definitional firmness favoured in continental legalism, as opposed to the identity-based pluralism that dominates progressive discourse in parts of the American Academy and judicial activism. The fact that the EU has long protected single-sex spaces, even while being staunchly pro-LGBTQ+, reflects a balancing act that Britain is only now tentatively imitating. And that balancing act is something that we should have been pioneering. Meanwhile, the US, particularly under a returning Trump, threatens to bulldoze nuance with tariffs and ultimata. This great deal, says Vance, is possible if Britain plays ball, but ball in this case means subordination to a nation that is ploughing through everything because it thinks by definition you get identity. Identity doesn't come with definition. Identity comes with a sense of purpose and a sense of being. And that isn't legally defined. That is emotionally defined. And we have to play between the two. Our emotional identity, which is our identity, and our legal identity, which is our identity. Our biological identity, which is our identity. It is perfectly possible, I think, to have 3 or more different identities for different purposes. And if those identities are predicated on kindness rather than exclusion, then we are in a safe place. The problem with the American obsession with definition is it's an obsession with nastiness, with exclusion, and with demeaning others. So, the gender ruling and the trade negotiations are linked to a common thread: sovereignty. Sovereignty, the control of ourselves, the control of our body, the control of our island, the control of our land. Who decides what a woman is? Who sets the rules of trade? In both cases, Britain is learning that ambiguity is no longer an option. So Starmer needs to choose: uphold legal clarity at home and regulatory harmony with Brussels, or indulge in the ideological chaos of transatlantic Trumpism. And the silence of his female ministers, it's not just about gender. It's about alignment, cultural, legal, and global. For a party so obsessed with being safe to vote for, this silence says more than a manifesto ever could. The silence says we're not prepared to make that leap into that level of ambiguity. Ambiguity is no longer an option. I think, frankly, that is a mistake.